Throughout the COVID era, few, if any, personalities have appeared on television more than Dr. Peter Hotez.
Dr. Hotez, welcome to the show.
Dr. Hotez, thank you so much for taking the time.
Dr. Hotez, welcome back to the NewsHour.
He has forcefully advocated the most authoritarian and destructive measures, from lockdowns.
We may have to go through that full lockdown.
Intensify social distancing control.
Social isolation, absolutely mandatory.
Mask mandates.
Too many people are defiant of masks.
And most of all, to inject all of humanity with experimental pharmaceutical products.
Vaccine mandates. Every kid over the age of 12, not only we're going to fully vaccinate the American people, but vaccinate the planet, vaccinate the entire world.
We have to aggressively vaccinate.
There's no real option here. Vaccinate the Southern Hemisphere. Vaccinate the African continent, South Asia, and Latin America. We're looking at up to 8-9 billion doses. Let's go vaccinate the African people. The security of the country depends on getting everybody vaccinated.
Hotez has received countless honors and awards, from local restaurants to the American Medical Association and the city of Houston, where he now resides.
Hereby proudly proclaim this day, November 25th, 2021, as Dr. Peter Hotez Day in the city of Houston.
He is even nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. As this investigation will reveal, Peter Hotez has spent decades cozying up to powerful interests in the pharmaceutical industry, billionaire foundations, and the U.S. government. He has treated the world as a laboratory, exploiting every opportunity to undermine regulation and test new drugs on unsuspecting populations, precisely the opposite of the image of public health servant that he projects. In 1989, Hotez's first postdoctoral award was from Pfizer, along with $100,000. This allowed him to continue experiments for a human hookworm vaccine that he had begun years earlier, a project that to this day has not succeeded.
Mr. Hotez has been deeply embedded in the pharmaceutical industry since the very earliest stage in his career.
In 2003, he was a Pfizer visiting professor in tropical diseases at the State University of New York at Stony Brook. The same year, he began work on a coronavirus vaccine, but shelved the project after the SARS virus flamed out and he could not find funding. Hotez's career has largely been devoted to development of drugs to test on underdeveloped and hyper-exploited countries in Latin America, South Asia, and Africa. He owes much of his success to three figures: Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, and Bill Clinton. In 1996, Fauci approved a $2.9 million NIAID grant for Hotez to study tropical diseases, carrying on a program that began in the Rockefeller Foundation, notorious for its funding a century earlier of the eugenics movements in the United States and Nazi Germany. Hotez would later coin these maladies neglected tropical diseases. He would sometimes describe them as anti-poverty vaccines. But most of these diseases exist because of poverty. Hotez himself has admitted as much.
We call them tropical diseases. It's a bit of a misnomer. They're diseases of poverty. Poverty is the overriding determinant.
The CDC explains that several of the neglected tropical diseases can be controlled or even eliminated, and improving basic water, sanitation, and hygiene are highly effective strategies.
If you really worry about neglected tropical diseases, then you're really worried about sanitation, because sanitation is the primary reason why we've had an increase in lifespan over the past 150 years. It's the number one reason. It's 90% of the answer. So antibiotics and all these other things have had no role, vaccines, compared to sanitation.
Rather than address root causes, Hotez has spawned a neglected tropical disease industrial complex dependent on the perpetual poverty that he claims his pharmaceutical products combat. In 2000, with $18 million from the Gates Foundation, he founded his own department in George Washington University and, now heading the prestigious Sabin Institute, started the Human Hookworm Vaccine Initiative to continue its development.
One of the foundation's key partners is Professor Peter Hotez, who's doing inspiring work on tropical diseases, and we're very excited about being able to back some breakthroughs there and have a huge impact.
Hotez wrote in 2004, "With funding from the Gates Foundation, I believe that we can have in hand over the next decade vaccines for malaria, dengue, and hookworm." At the 2006 Clinton Global Initiative, the Sabin Institute launched its global network for tropical neglected diseases.
Clinton decided that these neglected tropical diseases needed attention. So it was actually CGI has been incredibly important in the development of this organization to give it the attention it needs. And as a result of CGI, we've been able to now attract some large-scale donors.
U.S. government money quickly began to pour in.
A $350 million initiative to target neglected tropical diseases.
When Hillary Clinton took over the State Department in 2009, USAID's annual neglected tropical disease budget nearly tripled.
We are the global leader in the fight against neglected tropical diseases. From the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which has given billions to revive immunization campaigns and discover new vaccines, to the Clinton Foundation.
From 2006 to 2021, the agency spent $1.1 billion, and pharmaceutical companies gave $28.6 billion worth of drugs to administer.
When it comes to fighting neglected tropical diseases, the commitment of the pharmaceutical industry starts at the highest levels of leadership.
For Hotez, these diseases and conditions are mere pretext to develop and deliver drugs. After a 2010 cholera outbreak in Haiti, Hotez remarked, "This is an opportunity to really think about ways to use the vaccine." Hotez has been a member and regular guest at subsequent Clinton global initiatives, appealing for money to develop more drugs.
I'm back this year talking about the need for the fact that we need innovation to make a new round of medicines and vaccines.
In 2014, President Obama named Hotez as U.S. science envoy to implement what he called vaccine diplomacy in the Middle East and North Africa. Hotez wrote that vaccine science diplomacy could also lead to the development and testing of some highly innovative neglected disease vaccines, and that poor populations have rights to biomedical innovation. In September 2014, Ebola virus in West Africa provided this opportunity.
Ebola fears throughout the country. Experts now warning of the unavoidable spread of the virus in Europe. And what happened to that vaccine for Ebola?
The Obama administration deployed 3,000 troops to Liberia.
We're going to establish a military command center in Liberia to support civilian efforts across the region, similar to our response after the Haiti earthquake.
For Anthony Fauci and Peter Hotez, it was a golden opportunity.
I am so excited to know that President Obama sent in 3,000 troops to create some semblance of a healthcare infrastructure. It makes it possible now to introduce these new products. Something I'm very excited about, it's now going to create a mechanism to bring in new interventions, new drugs, new vaccines that you couldn't bring in otherwise in a very chaotic situation.
We're going to start a very much expanded clinical trial in West Africa, likely in Liberia.
Obama sought $6 billion to support these efforts.
Our scientists continued their urgent research in the hope of finding new treatments and perhaps vaccines. And today I'm calling on Congress to approve the funding that we've requested.
While the government, pharmaceutical companies, and their functionaries sought to conduct medical experiments, one bioethicist spoke out.
These drugs have never been tested in humans. Therefore, the dangerous and adverse effects can neither be known nor safely predicted. It's entirely possible they may be ineffective or even harmful. What has been done here is not research, but rather it is scary experimental treatment. Some of these misadventures occurred on the African continent, leading to a pervasive distrust of Western drug companies using Africans as their experimental guinea pigs. The stark reality is that pharmaceutical companies are a business, and the business has to have a market.
Though Ebola eventually subsided without any vaccines, Hotez and the Sabin Institute have continued developing them along with other products. In September 2022, he attempted to again rebrand his experimental pharmaceutical products, this time as malnutrition vaccines, claiming that approval processes could be accelerated to help avert an imminent food catastrophe or even potential mass starvation events. We must begin this process imminently. To date, Hotez has received $4.2 million from Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim's foundation, $9.6 million from Fauci's NIAID, and $44 million from the Gates Foundation. He continues to maintain close relationships with pharmaceutical giants like Pfizer and Eli Lilly. Hotez's Sabin Institute is now at Baylor University in Houston, Texas, flush with funding from the Gates Foundation despite having never succeeded in developing a working vaccine. In the era of COVID-19, Hotez would become one of the most aggressive ideologues of the emergent biomedical security regime, demanding questioning be censored and criticism criminalized.
Wow, Dan, some shocking stuff with this guy. Most people have no idea about this. I'm sure most people have zero idea of his history. Really shocking. What stood out to you? I mean, when you started on this path, what was the most shocking thing that you discovered with this guy?
Well, seeing how excited Hotez was to basically use, as that bioethicist we saw, what he described as experiments on the third world, on global South countries, basically taking little African and Latin American kids and injecting them with products to see what happens. I mean, it harkens back to the darkest times of medicine, and I think someone like Hotez, that's what he really encapsulates. With and also the how the biopharmaceutical complex and the military-industrial complex are completely the same. We saw that Hotez was so excited that Obama sent troops to West Africa because that would allow this mass vaccination campaign, which of course didn't work. And so, that can't happen without the military. And so it's, using the global South as a testing ground for pharmaceutical products, and that's been going on for decades with all kinds of horrible results. So I think that's the most shocking aspect for me.
And we should point out that being able to do this research, this investigation, thanks in part to the Vaccine Safety Research Foundation, right?
Yeah, Vaccine Research Safety Foundation supported my work in this investigation. They've been great. I've done other work with them before. They helped put on the Defeat the Mandates rally here in Washington, D.C. Last year, and that was excellent. So they're doing really good work. Everyone should check out their Rumble, Vaccine Research Safety Foundation, and their site, and give them a follow and watch their content.